Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our second session for the MRO stream. In this section, we have Doc Palmer speaking about scheduling and planning. A little background about Doc. He has nearly 4 decades of industrial experience, primarily as a practitioner within the maintenance department of the Jacksonville Electric Authority. He was responsible for overhauling the existing maintenance planning organization, of which the results played a role in expanding planning to all crafts and stations at the utility. Doc authored the Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Handbook in 1999. It is now in its 4th edition. He has also delivered numerous maintenance articles, including many scheduling and planning articles for MRO Magazine, as well as doing presentations for the industry. Currently, he provides guidance, mentoring, and training for companies internationally that are looking for maintenance planning success. He is a registered professional engineer with a master's degree in business administration. He is also a certified maintenance reliability professional. Doc will do his presentation on scheduling and planning. It will explore how modern reliability professionals know the answer to reducing reactive work is doing more proactive work. However, the big question is, how can we do more proactive work when we have our hands full of reactive work? Proper maintenance planning and scheduling serves as the productivity piece of maintenance, allowing common gains of 50% increase to work order completion rates. Doc will use examples of real companies with great productivity gains to demonstrate how proper planning and scheduling really work. Over to you, Doc.
Thanks, Mario. Thanks for asking me to speak today. I've enjoyed writing for MRO Magazine as well. I want to share some slides, but before I do, just a little bit about my background in addition to what Mario said. I worked for the electric company in Florida, and when I got into maintenance, we had already been doing maintenance planning and scheduling for 10 years, and we just hated it. But we were not allowed to stop. We couldn't tell we were getting any benefit out of it at all. But supposedly someone said it was a best practice, and we just weren't allowed to stop. We were doing planning because we were told to do planning. And we were really frustrated. I could not find any books or magazine articles written about planning and scheduling. And I couldn't find any other companies that were not frustrated like we were. So we were left on our own to struggle. And after about a year, we suddenly hit on a couple of concepts that really made it tangibly work. And because of that, I wrote a magazine article. And from that magazine article explaining what we were doing, McGraw-Hill, that's the largest book publisher in the world, asked me to write a handbook. I'm not really a writer by nature, and I struggled to put all these issues together that we had dealt with, but God just blessed this book, and it's been McGraw-Hill's best-selling reliability book for the last 20 years. And as a result of that, I got invitations to go talk to people about planning and scheduling. I got to see a lot of what a lot of other companies were doing with planning and scheduling. And I think we all have the same issues with what makes it frustrating and what makes it work. So what I want to do to you today with you is share a number of companies that have really made it work and why they know it's working, because we got a huge bump in productivity. That's a big part of it. And then there's some other gains as well. So I just want to demonstrate those improvements, those tangible results, and then share with you the 2 concepts that really makes it work. So let me share my screen here and see if we can do that. Share. And this is the presentation, examples of great results. And this is me and the book that I was able to write. In fact, I got so many invitations to come talk to people. I took an early retirement 13 years ago, and I've seen a lot of plants around the world, and that's just my passion, is planning and scheduling. This is the large power plant that I worked at in Florida. When we got planning and scheduling working, we suddenly jumped from 150 work orders completed per month to over 250 work orders per month with the same size workforce of 30 mechanics. And in 6 weeks, we ran out of work orders. Doesn't mean we're overstaffed. It exposed, we're really not very good at generating proactive work to keep things from breaking. We're busy with our hands full of reactive work. And if somebody tells us about some little problem, we just can't deal with it until it breaks, and then we can deal with it. But if you suddenly get a pop of over 100 work orders a month, it's all proactive work because you're already doing the reactive work. You can start getting around to the proactive work. A food plant in Europe that I worked with, they jumped from completing 238 work orders a month to 339 work orders a month. And if you're not used to looking at a statistical control chart, the top line is, the green bar is their average and what they went up to. And there's no numbers along the points, which means they did not pop any statistical tests. Everything's within control. They honestly got 100 work orders extra a month from the same workforce. So the question is, as Mario started us with, if you have your hands full of reactive maintenance, how can you do more proactive maintenance to keep things from breaking? You can get a 50% pop. An energy plant in Asia, in the country of Brunei, it's a large facility that liquefies natural gas. They jumped from 135 work orders a week to completing 203 work orders a week. They got a 50% pop. 70 work orders a week, or almost 300 work orders a month of free proactive maintenance. And then in about 3 months, they ran out of work orders. They loaned some people to another refinery, and they also went into Ramadan. But even when they got all their people back, they're still at 129 work orders a week, which is where they were. It's not that they lost their productivity, it's that they're just not very good at generating proactive work. And that proactive work is out there. Your operators have a feel for the pain level that maintenance will do anything. And if they tell you about some little thing, you're not going to do anything because you have your hands full of reactive maintenance. In fact, they're actually trying to help you by not bothering you with some little thing. Not only that, at a plant that I helped in West Virginia, the maintenance manager, Mickey, showed me this great work order. It was a lube oil analysis that said this particular gearbox is probably going to have a failure in about 2 months. I said, that's great. You got 2 months head notice to take care of it before it bothered anybody. Said, no, doc, this work order right here, it sat I got a chat that I have a gray box on the corner of my screen, so I'm not sure why that is. I'll try to change my picture on the side just a little bit. This work order, though, he said, doc, that's not what happened. We had 2 months to take care of it, but it just sat here on the corner of my desk for 6 weeks. Yesterday, we had a catastrophic failure on that gearbox. It caused us some capacity loss. And today we have time to work on it. So even when we know about it, we just don't get around to that proactive work that keeps things from breaking. But if something breaks, people yell at us and we go take care of it. So this gives you a 50% pop in work order completion rate. Well, why can you get a 50% pop in work order completion rate? I mean, that almost sounds too good to be true. The reason is because, as this plant Chicago shows, it's this ugly thing called wrench time. We do not have to measure wrench time, but the concept is why we can get more work done. Normal maintenance forces around the world, we're all at 35% wrench time. So at this plant, I did a 2-day workshop, and the assistant plant manager said, well, before we do anything different, we're going to do a wrench time study. They started rumors, got people antsy, and they found out they were at 35% wrench time. That means only 35% of the time we're actually pulling wrenches and moving a job ahead. And that includes confined space, lockout, tag out, filling out paperwork. All of that's wrench time. It's what we want to pay for. But if you leave the job to go get another part, that's work, but it's not wrench time. If you leave the job to go to break, that's part of the day, but it's just not wrench time. And we allow breaks. We like a check-in meeting. We like wrap up at the end of the day. But all these little activities, including waiting for your next job and that kind of stuff, it's 65%. And it's certainly not unavoidable. So when you do the scheduling and planning right, you get a pop in wrench time. This plant here got a 10% pop, and a 10% pop in wrench time, 35 to about 45. The bars are a little off here. That's a 30% pop right there. Typically, we get a 50 to 55% wrench time, and 55 divided by 30 is about a 50% pop. They measured it out by crafts, so these have a little bit larger margin of error. It looks like mechanics went from 40 to 55. The electricians went from 50 to 65. The instrument techs, we were not doing planning or scheduling for them. They also did not have maintenance supervisors for that craft. And whenever you don't have maintenance supervisors and your maintenance is reporting directly to operations, you have really low productivity. The operators, I want to see you, stay right here in case something breaks. And we're not doing hardly any proactive work. So that was a lesson to me. I would rather have supervisors before planning, because with maintenance supervisors, you get to 35% wrench time. And then with the planning and scheduling, you pop up into the 55% range for wrench time. They showed they got a 10% pop. They call it a 28% improvement. Their PM compliance went up. That means we're doing PMs on time. That contributes to your reliability. Now, your percent proactive work would go up just because you're doing more work. By definition, if you're doing all your reactive work, any extra work you do is proactive work. And your percent breakdown would come down because you're doing more proactive work. But does it really affect your reliability is the question, because that's where your money is. Yes. They doubled their mean time between failure for their wet mills. It was a large corn milling operation, so they became twice as reliable and more profitable. Wastewater plant in the United States, they started doing more corrective maintenance. And their corrective maintenance backlog was coming down, particularly their corrective maintenance backlog that was overdue according to their priority system. If somebody tells you about a little problem, you've only got so long to take care of it before it turns into a bigger problem. So they were better at tamping that down. They started doing more preventive maintenance, and their overdue preventive maintenance came down. Your overdue preventive maintenance coming down is what affects your reliability. And let's just talk, not just doing stuff, but the industry rule of thumb is every extra proactive maintenance job that you do is worth 10 times its value. If you spend an extra $1 greasing a pump correctly, you save $10 replacing a bearing, collateral damage, and loss of availability. So it's a huge profit maker getting your equipment running. This is their overtime chart. The yellow line was their budget. The blue line was their target. But their actual achievement was 4,000 hours. So they're doing more work with fewer hours worth $300,000. And the big money is actually replacing bad equipment. The industry rule of thumb is every dollar you invest in replacing bad equipment correctly to give yourself more reliable equipment is worth 100 times its value. So if you take $300,000 in overtime and use that to replace the correct improper equipment, that's worth $30 million to profitability for your company. Another wastewater, but also water utility in Georgia in the United States. The chart on the left shows they went from completing 34,000 work orders a year to 58,000 work orders a year. So if you wanted confirmation of how can we get a bump like that without doing a wrench time study, there it is right there in the work order completion rate. So what I'm showing you basically is the purpose of planning. To a large degree is to get a pop in work order completion rate which is all proactive work. But they did their extra work with 10,000 fewer labor hours. So it was quite an achievement. The cylinders on the right, the green cylinders, show that their average work order used to take 3.5 hours. Now their average work order takes 2 hours. Well, of course you can do more work. Well, no, these are the same work orders to a large degree. This is an illustration of Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law says the amount of work assigned expands to fill the amount of time available. So if you don't give people enough work, the work you do give them will expand to fill all their time, and everybody will be busy and you won't even know it. So at 35% wrench time, everybody's busy doing something. Everybody's got an assignment. Nobody's goofing off. The jobs are just taking longer than they might. So there's a big achievement for them. Pulp plant in Florida, in Fernandina Beach, Florida, they went from completing 170 work orders a week to 225 work orders a week. They get a pop of 55 work orders a week of free proactive maintenance. That's 200 work orders a month of free proactive maintenance. We've always got our reactive maintenance covered. In fact, you've staffed yourself over the years to do the reactive maintenance. If operators scream really loudly, it's easy to hire maintenance people. But if somebody quits, we take a while to replace that maintenance person until the operators scream, and then we can replace them. Well, operator screaming is the definition of reactive maintenance. So we've staffed ourselves to do enough PM to be a good company making money, but to a large degree, we fine-tuned our staffing to make sure we do all the reactive maintenance. However, if you're doing reactive maintenance, you're not as profitable as you could be. How can we do more proactive maintenance to squash the reactive maintenance? Well, you can get a pop in work order completion rate. Any pop of extra work orders that you get is proactive maintenance. They did not do a wrench time study here, so I just kind of backfit. They had a 65-person maintenance staff. So with the extra work they're doing, it's like they had 86 people. They got 21 people for free. And that's the equivalent if they were at 35, because everybody's at 35, because it's a human issue at the point we feel busy. They got to 46% wrench time, which doesn't sound like a lot. They got 200 work orders a month of free proactive maintenance. The purpose of planning and scheduling, that's why we do it, because we want to pop in work order completion rate. To shift gears here a little bit, and also to speak to Parkinson's law, the amount of work assigned expands to fill the amount of time available. Schedule compliance for a week should be under 90%. If you're above 90%, you're not giving yourself enough work to defeat Parkinson's law. And so you're at 35% wrench time and you don't get a pop in work order completion rate. So properly, schedule compliance should be between 40 and 90%. Under 40, you're not trying. Over 90, you're lying. And it's interesting, we get caught in the trap of we want 90% schedule compliance because it's a good school grade. This is not a school issue. This is like a bowling score. A really good bowling score would be 200 out of 300. That's only 67%. But that applies to schedule compliance. This plant, I like them because they're honest to themselves. They had another problem though. They were using a lot of blanket work orders. If you're using blanket work orders, standing work orders, instead of individual discrete work orders, you can't analyze where your failures are. Where's our biggest problem? Which equipment do we need to replace? Well, we don't know because we charge everything to a blanket. So not only do they not lie to themselves because they're between 40 and 90, but they started using work orders. So it looks like they're doing more work, but actually they're just starting to use work orders to go after that. Where's our worst equipment that we can replace? Every truly worst equipment you replace is worth 100 times its value to your profit. And it looks like they're having more emergencies, but actually they're documenting their emergencies. If you go to management and say, I want to spend $100,000 to replace a large control valve, but I can't prove we've ever worked on it. You're not going to get the money. So you can't become more reliable because you're out of control. They did a wrench time study. They found they were at 35% wrench time. And when they made improvements, they jumped into the low 40s, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a big deal. For a 35-person workforce, it looks like they got 6 people for free. For a 50-person workforce, they probably got like 10 people for free. 10 people to do proactive maintenance that we can't get around to. And this is my finest moment. I did a one-day workshop in Brazil in English to a group of maintenance managers, and it was translated simultaneously into Portuguese. And this mine manager went back, one of the maintenance managers, to their mine and sent me this email and said, Doc, we went from completing 3,000 work orders a month to 8,000 work orders a month. I said, that's incredible. Were you not using work orders before? No, Doc, we've always used individual discrete work orders. Well, was everybody just standing around before? No, Doc, honestly, everybody had something to do. We were making money, but now we're a lot more reliable and we're even making more money. And so I looked at this chart and my first thought is it looks like a dinosaur, but forgetting that, getting that out of your mind, don't think of a purple cow. I think they just giving more attention to things, they pop from 3,000 to 5,000. So it looks like the company that they did not have supervisors because they just weren't paying attention and they suddenly got to where they should be. And from 5,000 to 8,000, it looks like they got a 50% pop in work order completion rate. So that doesn't seem unrealistic there, but it is incredible. Well, the two concepts and issues that make planning frustrating versus working, one is the planning itself. This is what the world thinks maintenance planning is. Well, we're going to hire planners to come up with great job plans, and the mechanics will never have problems. They'll never not know what to do, and they'll never have to hunt for parts. You can't do that in a million years. That's not real life. First of all, mechanics know how to work on stuff. They've been here for 20 or 30 years. And you just can't say, we'll always have the parts. And what happens if you try to do that, every time a mechanic gets a job plan, they resent the planner telling them what to do, and they nitpick it to death. Well, you missed this, you missed this. I need 2 gaskets. The ladder wasn't long enough. And they just beat the planner to death. And the planners actually apologize and spend their time helping jobs in progress, which is helpful, but we're actually not planning the work anymore. So we've got to knock ourselves out of that thought. And the word plan is a bad word. It makes it sound like you're going to tell somebody what to do. Believe it or not, we want to do planning as a head start. I think you need 1 gasket and a small ladder. And the mechanic goes out there and figures, well, I really needed 2 gaskets and a longer ladder. Plus, if you ever work on this again, it's really important to know this, 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 and this. And they write that down. And the next time the planner tells them what to do, they say, well, make sure you take a longer ladder, 2 gaskets, and do this, 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 and this. And we want great job plans because eventually we'll hire new people. We want great job plans because even a senior person could use a great reference. But we don't want to come across as mechanics thinking we're telling them what to do. We've actually spent a lot of money training these mechanics. What they could use, though, is a head start, clarifying the scope, information as a reference, and certainly all the learning over the years. And that's just a cycle of improvement. We talk about continuous improvement, plan, do, check, act. That's Dr. Deming from the 1950s. So it's 70 years old thinking, and that's really what we want to do. Dr. Deming was an American, went to American companies in the 50s and said, if you would admit you're not perfect, you could get better. Everybody laughed at him. He got on a boat, sailed for Japan, and helped create Toyota that does continuous improvement. Toyota says, hey, we're pretty good. Is there anything we could do better? Hey, we're pretty good, but is there anything we could do different? Hey, we're pretty good. and they just nickel and dime themselves to greatness. And they have put our car industry pretty much out of business, except when it gets on the government life support. But that's what we want to do. Just set up planning. In fact, if you'll call your planners planner craft historians, I think it makes more sense for what we're doing. So the first thing is you got to get people out of the, hey, we're not going to get a perfect job plan. That's not what we're trying to do. On the scheduling, when we see scheduling, our mind just goes bananas and we think of this grid for the entire next week. Maintenance has too much churn for that. You cannot create daily schedules a week ahead of time. We want daily schedules, which I agree with that, done by the crew supervisor. But mostly we get in a routine of the supervisor taking care of operations and keeping everybody busy every day. And when we do these schedules a week ahead of time, we make them way too complicated and we spend all our time rearranging them, which is a waste of time. Or we don't give ourselves enough work to defeat Parkinson's law. Instead of trying to pretend there's not much churn in maintenance where jobs taking longer or shorter, it really helps just to start a crew off with a batch of work for the week. And honestly, starting ourselves off with enough work for the week helps us complete more work. And Dr. Drucker was a contemporary of Dr. Deming in the 1950s. He said 90% of the time we don't understand the purpose of what we're doing. Most people think the purpose of scheduling is to complete the schedule. That's why they want 90 or 100% schedule compliance. They've missed the boat. The purpose of scheduling is to help us complete more work than we would normally complete. And when you start people off with a fully loaded schedule of 100% and tell them, we know there's going to be a lot of churn, it's okay, we don't get it all done, and we end up with about 40 to 90% schedule compliance, we actually get a pop in work order completion rate. That was our goal, to get more work done than we normally get done. So the purpose of scheduling is not necessarily to complete the schedule, is to get that pop in work order completion rate. So we just want to start ourselves off with a full bucket of work. That becomes a mission in our minds. We want a plant that runs high capacity at the right cost. What gets in the way? Reactive maintenance. If you have any reactive maintenance, you're not as productive and profitable as you could be. Well, how do you get rid of reactive maintenance? You have to do more proactive maintenance than you're doing right now. Every extra dollar you do of proactive maintenance saves you $100 in profit, because that's how the reactive maintenance is hurting you. Well, how can we do more proactive maintenance when we have our hands full of reactive maintenance? Well, we can actually increase our labor productivity. With doing planning and scheduling right, you get a pop in work order completion rate. And that's actually the tag on my book, is increase your workforce without hiring. And that encourages more people to tell us about little things, and it helps us develop our muscles to generate predictive maintenance work orders and develop better PMs. Why do we do planning? We're not trying to create perfect job plans. We're trying to run a cycle of improvement, so every time we work on something, we get better at it. We also do planning because it supports scheduling. The weekly scheduling as goal settings of just a simple full bucket of work per week really increases productivity, but it only works when it's okay to break the schedule. It also, we do planning and scheduling because it frees up supervisors to be in the field. And we've talked about the value of supervisors. That's a big deal. We don't want them stuck in their offices. If the planners can get jobs ready, dig through the backlog, that's a big service for the supervisors. This final chart I'm about to show you is explained by these bullets here, but the chart is when we first pull people out of maintenance, we pull a mechanic out to become a planner, everybody's screaming, you're killing us, we'd rather have the mechanic. They get pretty good at helping jobs in progress because they get beat up on because the mechanics complain that the parts were missing. But I have found that we're solving the same problem year after year. I think we need 2 gaskets. I thought we already knew that. I know, but we didn't have time to plan the job and avoid that problem. So for 2 reasons, to avoid the problems that you had in the past, but also to plan enough work to fill up a schedule, we have to painfully pull planners out of helping jobs in progress. That's a real pain there. If you fill up a schedule 100% because you have enough planned work, you get a 50% pop in work order completion rate. And all of that extra work is proactive work. You can do that in about 2 weeks or a month from scratch. You just have to plan enough work, fill up a schedule, and tell supervisors it's okay if you don't get all the work done. And that's a really strange conversation that you have there. But actually, there's a more improvement just from planning all the work. If you fix a pump so it lasts twice as long because you don't do the same dumb thing you did 2 years ago, you've actually doubled your reliability. It's a huge effect on our profit. And the final frontier is if you're using work orders, you can analyze your database. Where is our biggest problem? It's on cathodic protection at the waterfront in the spring at Northside Generating Station. And you know that because you have work orders and you can replace crappy equipment. Every dollar you invest in a better purchasing engineering decision is worth $100 on the bottom line. So it's a huge profit cycle coming from the planning and scheduling. So the concepts are you have to get over this idea of perfect plans. Then you have to get over this idea of 95% schedule compliance. It just forces ourselves to not schedule enough work to defeat Parkinson's law. The amount of work assigned expands to fill the amount of time available. And if you are giving a crew a full batch of work and tell them it's okay to break the schedule, you'll complete more work, and it's all proactive. So that's the simple take on it. It's actually simpler to create plans knowing that you don't have to be perfect, and create full schedules just as a batch of work knowing that you don't have to complete all the work. So we're actually making it more simple and becoming more productive. And that's why we do the planning and scheduling. So Mari, I'll kick it over to you. If anybody has any questions.
All right, thank you very much for the in-depth presentation on scheduling and planning. A few questions came in over during your presentation. I'll put up the first one.
Yes. Let me stop sharing my screen. Get my face back up there.
Okay. There you go. Do you have any advice on how to get supervisors away from planning and out on the floor?
We want supervisors. The industry rule of thumb is for an 8-hour shift, the supervisor should be out wandering around in the field checking on jobs and stuff 6 hours. And we want to get parts and stuff ready for them to start jobs. And I think sometimes we scramble to get parts. Once a job is started, if you're planning for 20, 30 people, the planner can't really help. And the mechanics and supervisors have to struggle during jobs. But after that, the next time we work on it, we shouldn't have to struggle as much. But we've got to get that cycle where we get the feedback. You know, it took me a half hour to find this extra gasket. Write that down. The next time I'll make sure we have 2 gaskets. That's the long thing is. But also, we honestly need storerooms that support us. I think we try to save money in the storeroom to a fault. The real money is in reliability, reliability of generation and production of our product and stuff. So don't shortchange the parts and get the feedback every time we had a parts problem. So next time we can avoid it. But yeah, it's a struggle on maintenance jobs. There is a lot of churn.
Thank you for that. Next question. In your experience, is the problem in implementing improvements an issue of knowledge or organizational culture?
think a little bit of its culture is, we're good companies. Why should we change? But if Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric, and I've heard this quote attributed to him, Jack Welch said, if GE knew what GE knew, we'd be invincible. But we don't, so we're not. It's institutionalizing knowledge. And if a planner's planning for 20 to 30 mechanics, that's a lot of information and skill and wisdom and everything that we could be feeding into work orders to make work orders better. And so we don't want to present planning as I'm telling you what to do. We really want to present planning as every time we work on stuff, we want to save everything we learned. And your best mechanics do that in their lockers. That knowledge is there, but it's not very shareable. So I think on a micro approach, the nickel and diming our way to greatness, there's a lot of knowledge out there we can make plans better. Overall, I think companies, they do get settled and we don't implement changes and stuff like we should. And planning and scheduling, doing it correctly, it is a challenge to implement it because we're going to do planning, but you're not going to get perfect job plans. Well, what does that mean? We're going to do scheduling. We're going to give you a fully loaded schedule, but it's okay to break the schedule. Well, what does that mean? I mean, it just sounds weird. So we usually get frustrated with both of those.
That's some great insight. Next question's a little longer. Do you have any tips on planning without CMMS? We have 20 factories, but some of them still don't have any software and maintenance departments. We are in the pharmaceutical industry, so to get time from production isn't easy.
I honestly think you can do planning and scheduling without a computer. And the computer will help us, but if you have a death grip, you need a death grip on planning and scheduling before a computer will help you at all. But you can use paper work orders, say, this is what I think. The mechanic bleeds all over it, marks it up, well, I really need 2 gaskets. And you save that information in a patient file for that asset, just like the paper file when you go to the dentist. And you can do scheduling is, well, how many people do you have? 10? Is everybody here next week? Okay, let me get 400 hours worth of paper work orders and give it to you. And just how does this work look for next week? Operations say, well, we can do those jobs next week, but not that job. So let's get a different batch and start off the week with a batch of 400 work that makes sense. And let the supervisor wade through the week working with operations. You can do this whole thing on paper. You honestly can get a 50% bump in 2 weeks or a month without a CMMS. I think a CMMS is great. You can share information and find information better, but you can do this whole thing in paper.
All right, thank you. Next question. How many planners do you think you need?
You need one planner for every 20 to 30 maintenance craftspeople. If you have fewer than that, if you're planning for 10 to 20 persons, there's some other things you can do. You can help some jobs in progress, which typically planners don't do that much. Even if you're planning for one planner for only 10 persons, I still think that's a good ratio. Your planners can plan all the work, help some jobs in progress, and maybe be on a project team or 2 or something like that. But so anything over 5 people, I think you should have a planner. But a planner just doing planning and scheduling can handle 20 to 30 people.
Now, staying with planners, does the planner also do the scheduling?
Typically, for me, the weekly schedule is put together by the planner because just that batch of work is really easy to do. It's actually simpler than a big complicated schedule. So the planner is planning all day Monday, planning all day Tuesday, planning all day Wednesday, planning all day Thursday. Friday morning, they pop a schedule together for the 2 or 3 crews that they're planning for. They have a quick meeting after lunch, and Friday afternoon, they're back to planning. And then the supervisor day to day does the daily scheduling. So my approach, the weekly schedule, it's just a batch of work. The daily schedule is just supervisor handing out work orders and coordinating lockout tagout as the week goes on. So Don't make it more complicated than it is. You can have a full-time scheduler, but they might be doing some other things too.
All right. And the next question, what would you say are the main requirements for making planning and scheduling work?
Planning and scheduling is not natural. What's natural is fixing things when they break, and we don't want the planner to get in our way. But we want to start ourselves off with a full batch of work, and then it's okay to break the schedule. And anything that breaks, fix it. It takes management support is one thing. Hey, look, we're going to do this. It sounds weird, but we're going to do it. And then you need a change agent with a death grip on how it works. And they have to go around and help people. Okay, well, here's how we're going to do the planning. Here's where in the computer we're going to put the job plans. And yes, I know 100% scheduling sounds weird, but here's why it works. And so management doesn't have the time to do all that. They need to designate a lead person to implement that. It's like the general that says, I don't know what they are, but go get me some logistics. And if anybody complains, tell them to come see me, and I'll tell them you're the person. And then that person is the person with their feet on the street and the time to go around and do some hand holding. No, the plans aren't going to be perfect. We're trying to run a Deming cycle. What's that? Well, Dr. Deming. And a planner's really not a planner. They're a craft historian. And here's how we're going to do planning. And we're going to do scheduling. We're going to fully load schedules. What? There's no way we can get it done. Well, it's okay. It's okay to break the schedule. Well, that doesn't make sense because we are going to break the schedule. I know, but it'll make us more productive. Are you saying we're not productive? No, but this is just the best practice. Well, this is stupid. No, it really works. And it just takes that management support and fully loaded schedules where it's okay to break the schedule. I think they're so unusual that everybody has this opportunity to get a 50% pop in work order completion rate, but you're going to be doing some weird stuff. So it takes a management support and a change agent to make it work.
Okay, we can take one more quick question. Is there a way to optimize planning time and avoid over planning?
Yes, we make the plans too complicated to get all the work planned. I would like great plans, but you have to plan all the work. So some of the plans aren't going to be that great, but we have skilled craftspeople. So yes, the answer is we have skilled craftspeople. We can rely on skilled craftspeople as we're gathering their knowledge to make plans better over the years. We can't start out with perfect plans. So that's a saving grace. Let me make one mention before we start. This is my commercial plug. I do public workshops, and there's actually 2 next week, palmerplanning.com. But yeah, I would love to have some people for a 2-day workshop. And also, I do enjoy writing for MRO Magazine. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you very much. That concludes Doc's presentation. Thank you again, Doc. We will now have another networking and trade show break. During the break, don't forget to visit the exhibit hall where some of our exhibitors will be doing presentations in their booths, as well as answering any and all questions you may have, or go to the networking tab and chat with your industry colleagues. Before the day ends, I wanted to let everyone know that the expo will stay online after today. All sessions will be available to view on demand. As an added bonus, we have an exclusive on-demand session by Blair Fraser from UE Systems on bearing lubrication and health insights made simple. You can message Blair now in the Sessions tab, and the presentation will be available at 3:30. Thank you once again for attending the first ever virtual MRO and Expo. And thank you, Doc, for the presentation.